Godzilla vs. Biollante. This is my least favorite Heisei Godzilla film. Fight me, G fans. However, ElGoji98 loves this movie, so this script is based off of his opinions, but I also, sneakily would you say, added my own points of view on this. This is basically the Rescuers Down Under of the Godzilla Renaissance because it flopped financially and it had mixed reviews. It's also known for introducing the Heisei production cast and crew for the rest of the series. Over the years, it had gained a gold following over its soundtrack and unique plot, but has gotten criticism over soundtrack, casting, and special effects. And in short, it's a film with mixed feelings. The film starts right after the return of Godzilla, or right during it, to be exact. In the beginning, we see a montage of the previous film showing Godzilla's rampage throughout Tokyo and the damage he had caused. Around the time when Hayashida activates his device and lures Godzilla to his doom at Mount Mihara, a group of scientists gather around the ruins of Shinjuku to pick up some leftover pieces of his flesh that have been blasted off by the Super X before being crushed by that building. However, some of the scientists were actually American soldiers in disguise, paid off by Biomajor, this American conglomerate that somehow rivals InGen in this universe. However, after a shootout with the Japanese, the Americans themselves were killed by a lone Middle Eastern agent who picks up the flesh and smuggles himself and his flesh out to sea, where he relaxes before reaching his final destination, Sararia, which is basically the Godzilla version of Saudi Arabia and Turkey mixed together. There were signs of Turkish mixed with Arabic in the film, that's why. It is revealed that the agent was in the employ of Genshiro Shirogami, a biophysicist who works at the Middle Eastern lab where his daughter Erica works as an intern. However, one fateful day, a terrorist bombing blows up the lab, where everyone was able to get out safely, but conveniently for the plot to advance, kills Erica. This leaves him shaken as he quits immediately and heads back to Japan where he lives as a recluse in the mountains, completely unaware that he's being watched by the Americans, who themselves are unaware that they're being watched by the Saradian agent. It's a church meme all over again. Later that night, both Americans and Saradian head into his lab and eventually they try to kill each other. However, something strange is looking around. Next thing you know, tokenism takes place as the flowers come to life and sugar the black guy to death, and one of the white guys jumps out the window. But to even things out, the other white guy dies while the Saradian agent gets his first taste of what will become a trend in anime: tentacles. But it doesn't last very long as he hacks off the vine and flees the facility. Once Shirogami returns from Tokyo, he sees his lab broken into and a massive hole by the lakeview. It is revealed that a few days ago, a violent eruption at Mount Mihara caused tremors all over Japan, damaging buildings and whatnot, among them Shirogami's laboratory. Through unknown reasons, though I suspect that a certain Soul Reaper is involved, Erica's soul is trapped in the flowers against her will. In a panic, he was able to acquire some Godzilla cells, or G cells for short. Original, isn't it? By agreeing to a project he wished he had involved himself with. Using those cells, he merges the worlds with them, and through bleach-related reasons, we'll just say, he merges Erica's soul in there, thus hoping he created a plant that can live forever. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. That morning, a group of townsfolk nearby see something big, bulging, and hideous in the water, as they see a giant rose with sharp teeth. Strangely enough, it is Pacific and doesn't bother doing anything, except crying out, at least for a while. The scientists find out why he needed those G cells in the first place, and lambast him for doing something so reckless and unethical. In the meantime, Biomajor drew a non-certain exposable alias, aka alien, threatens Japan to give them their top-secret project or they will release Godzilla from his volcanic prison. Seeing as they're at gunpoint, they reluctantly agree, and they meet with the lone agent near an expressway. Unknown to them, though, the Saradian agent watches from a distance with a sniper rifle, ready to make the kill once the time was right. However, once they were about to flip the switch, the agent fires at them, killing the thief in the truck and grabbing the project before the negotiators have a chance to. Unable to flip the switch in time, they can only watch as Godzilla is released from his volcanic prison. And it's the last time we see Mount Mihara in any shape or form in the Godzilla series. He's grown 10 meters, he's 90 meters tall now, and his face has been completely reworked due to the lava kind of molding his appearance from here on out. And he is angry. He is bent on taking Tokyo for himself once again. Now this is where things take a turn from here. ElGoji98 has a script which until now I've been reading. But because we have different theories of what happens when I'm out, we peacefully, will you say, agreed to use my take on the film after Godzilla was released from Mount Mihara due to personal reasons. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. After he was released, Biollante, as what Shirogami calls her, and yes, it is a her, because Erica is controlling that thing. She calls out to Godzilla, but while the characters believe she was crying, I actually believe that she was calling out for help. And she somehow detects him being released from the volcano and makes his way to Lake Ashinoko, where she's being held. Lake Ashinoko is this giant yet beautiful lake a couple of miles northwest of Mount Fuji. It used to be where this giant supervolcano named Mount Hakone stood. After an eruption that destroyed the volcano a couple million years before the country of Japan was founded, a giant caldera similar to Crater Lake in Oregon took its place. And over time, water filled up and leads to the lake we now know today. A Buddhist or Shinto shrine named after Hakone lays on the shoreline. Unwillingly the subject of numerous awesome photographs involving the lake. Rumor has it, the shrine was actually a former summer palace of the imperial family, and that the Red Gateway is all that's left of it. If ElGoji and I had our journey into Japan as planned, then this was a definite stop because he naturally is attracted to places featuring Godzilla movies, and I'm a sucker for environments and history thanks to Ghost of Tsushima and Red Dead Redemption 2. When this spectator ban is lifted, if any of you guys ever go to Japan, this is a must-stop destination for all you nature lovers, G fans. It's a great place to relax and unwind, and just to get away from the weebs. You can actually sail on the lake too. Alright, back to the program at hand. After dealing with battleships and jets, start off by a really cool cameo to the Japanese point of view. Godzilla faces off against the Super X2, a modified version of the Super X that looks like a freaking parallelogram with a bulgy antenna on top. It is notable for its fire mirror, which can reflect Godzilla's atomic breath back at him. It does this a few times to the point where his atomic breath starts to go purple from countless firing attempts. However, too much firing proved to be its downfall, as the mirror started to melt and burn, forcing it to retreat. After that little mishap, the Japanese government decides to shut down all the airports to prevent them from being in Godzilla's path, and also to prevent the Seradian agent from getting out of the country with the top secret project. Godzilla approaches and heads to Ashinoko as planned. Once there, it's nightfall, and the military occupies the lake with searchlights, as if that would be effective. Once at the shoreline, Godzilla is confused on why he's facing a rose, but vines that look like Venus flytraps answer his question. He starts to battle her, but gets his ass kicked due to the vines pulling him underwater and impaling his hand. Having enough, Godzilla shoots his atomic breath, which naturally does the job, because if you watch Pokemon or play the games, fire is effective against grass, and she starts to splurge a rather unsightly yellow blood or acid, I don't know which. This is where her Godzilla side takes over and Erica is losing control. She then puts up a wall in a panic, only for Godzilla to burst through it and burn her with an atomic breath, consuming her in flames. Shirogami is distraught to see his daughter die at the hands of the creature she studied on back in Seradia. However, behind those falling petals lies her true form, an abomination unable to be seen from both Godzilla and Shirogami's eyes, as a new voice took over and vowed revenge on Godzilla one day. Godzilla, running low on fuel, decides to find some place to eat. Deciding on a nuclear power plant near the Sea of Japan, around the Takahama area. However, in a rare moment of intelligence, he decides to take the long way around and surface in Osaka Bay instead of Ise Bay, as the military expected him to. Fun fact. For those of you who wanted to go to Osaka in the 80s and in the early 1990s, there was no airport around it for miles, and you were forced to go to either Fukuoka or Tokyo and then take a bullet train all the way to Osaka. Because at the time, Kansai International Airport was nothing but ocean. All there was a lifeguard tower and an oil well, which is where the military secret weapon, Miki Sagusa, was waiting. Sagusa is a teenager who has incredible psychic power, apparently, and she would make appearances in most of the rest of the series. In most films, she's actually useful and can deter Godzilla for a bit, but in other films, she's kinda useless. But at least in this one, she was able to buy these people in Osaka some time to escape, while he was distracted by her psychic showdown, which he wins easily, causing her to go into a coma for a while. He proceeds to Osaka in an awesome camera view shot from his point of view. Sounds so cool. Where at the same time, Goro and some other guy arrive amidst a crowd of fleeing concert goers as they proceed to beat up the Seradian about to leave the city to go to Abu Dhabi or something. They steal back their project, the anti-nuclear energy bacteria, living organisms that can consume nuclear energy at phenomenal rates. That piece of junk was the reason why both Americans and Seradians had their interest on Japan, so they could grab it and clone it for themselves and make some easy money. However, they split up as Gondo decides to lead an operation with him and 3 other soldiers into Osaka in the dead of night and try to shoot Godzilla with the ANEB. Here's where some of the cinematography works, as Godzilla is towering over Osaka Castle at 90 meters tall. Then it just goes to traditional Toho special effects, which was cool at the same time, but Sho Kuroki, the commander of Super X2, distracts Godzilla with the flying parallelogram. It works for a bit until the Super X2 runs out of missiles and decides to use the fire mirror in a last-ditch effort. It obviously fails, and it falls right into the site of Universal Studios Japan, potentially delaying construction for a few years. Once that was taken care of, Godzilla heads towards Gondo's location at 2021, where he manages to shoot Godzilla in the mouth and says his famous one-liner. Depending on the film version, in the Japanese version, he says, "Medicine works best if you take it through the mouth, Mr. Godzilla," which can be taken out of context. The English dub, though, has a different saying. "All this intravenous stuff isn't good for you. Stick to smoking." Yeah, good message for the kids right there. Regardless, Godzilla kills Gondo by smashing the Twin 21 on top of him and decides to leave Osaka, now running on fumes. The ANEB failed to make any effect on Godzilla, and Shirogami suggests making an artificial rainstorm around the area where he is to feed, and use microwave emitters to heat up his temperature. This works for the most part, but also fails to make any noticeable effect, as Godzilla starts to catch on to what they were doing and tries to leave, but the military try to draw him back at the base. After a few minutes of shooting at tanks and helicopters, Godzilla starts to feel feverish, and not because he's developing psychic powers. He sees the nuclear power plant just one mountain away, but before he could get any closer, spores appear in the sky. Biollante is back, and with a vengeance. Now that Erica is taking a back seat, her Godzilla side completely takes over and proceeds to thrash Godzilla with everything that she has, including impaling him with vines, manipulating Godzilla with the ground, causing him to fall, and just plain charging at Godzilla, which shocks him considering that something that big and heavy, especially a plant at 130 meters tall, it should not be able to move. And all she does is heat his temperature up, causing the ANEB to take effect. To top it all off, though, Biollante opens her mouth and proceeds to disintegrate most of Godzilla's skin with a radioactive corrosive sap that can reduce anything it touches. which in Godzilla's case, reduced his front to skeleton. She then charges at him and attempts to swallow him whole. But Godzilla, who was blinded by her sap at the last second, was able to shoot his atomic breath inside her mouth, fatally injuring her and inadvertently releasing Erica from her planned prison. But it has come at a cost. Now that the ANEB has taken effect and is starting to grow in potency, Godzilla's fever starts to get worse, to the point where he passes out and collapses headfirst into the ocean. Finally freed, Erica screams in happiness as she bids farewell to everyone and thanks Godzilla for undertaking such a grueling task and enduring the condition he was in. As a form of thanks, she partially heals him before leaving. Shirogami laments both his daughter and her savior for being what he and the scientists before him, who created them, have become. Confusing her thanks intended for Godzilla for one aim at the humans, Shirogami attempts to reach out to Erica, only to be shot in the heart by the Seradian assassin, killing him. Seeing him from afar, one of the guys chases him down. And you gotta blink twice when you see an army jeep chasing a DeLorean clone or something. He eventually tracks him down, but was unable to wrestle the gun from him, as the agent holds him at gunpoint. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, the microwave emitter he was on activates, frying him instantly. Kuroki gave the guy some assistance from afar. Godzilla regains consciousness and leaves Japan to recuperate somewhere safe. Biollante heads to the sky as a permanent rose. Erica has most likely entered Soul Society at this point, and Shirogami's boss mourns him before leaving. And that's the film. The second film in the Godzilla Renaissance had some pretty weird origins. Unlike previous Godzilla films where it had been suggested by studio executives, this one was suggested by Shinichiro Kobayashi, a dentist, who entered this story in a film competition by Toho. Parts of the original story included in the final film include Erica's death, Miki Sagusa, Biollante's creation, and the ending for the most part. Biollante was supposedly named after a passage from this French poem, Chanson d'automne, or Autumn Song, by Paul Verlaine. Specifically this passage, De Violon de l'Automne, which translates to the violins of autumn. Apparently, the combined violon with the katakana te, forming Biollante. This means Biollante is a violinist plant. And somehow Kobayashi claims it as a mere coincidence that the bio part of her name is related to biotechnology. Contrary to Shirogami's claim of Biollante being in Norse mythology, save for Erica possessing the monster, there's no such figure. Ask any Marblehead with an interest in Norse mythology, they'll tell you all about it. Biollante was originally supposed to be Erica, only planting Godzilla eyes. She would have Erica's figure and hairstyle, only plants instead of whatever material humans are made of, but retain the abilities you see in the final film and the games that follow whatsoever. And instead of her taking the appearance of a rose, it would be tropical plants that formed her appearance. And that would be her only fall for the whole movie. And she would have poisonous petals that resembled Mothra's wings. Other forms would include a rat form, a blossom-like form, and a stop-motion form, as CGI wasn't that prevalent at the time. Up to 1989, all the CGI that was used in the Godzilla series was brief and minimal that you wouldn't recognize it as such. It was mostly minor shots like the Soviet missile launch in Godzilla 1985, as well as his eye moving minutes later when he wakes up from that nuclear thunderstorm. And in this movie, it was used for small sequences involving the military's plans with Godzilla and the title itself, as well as a couple others. Originally, her malicious side would eat Godzilla and disappear, but the animation looked too cheap, and Heisei special effects man Koichi Kawakita would settle for both monsters walking away from the battle, but then changed to Godzilla feeling pity for what he had done to her, taking in the field of flowers before leaving. But in the end, the final ending was used. The film would notably introduce the staff for the rest of the Heisei era. Kazuki Omori, who directed and wrote the film, will continue writing the rest of the films in the timeline as a screenwriter. Koichi Kawakita would continue handling the special effects for all of the Godzilla films until 1995, where he would retire and work as a designer for Bandai for the rest of his days, which, coincidentally, released the Godzilla vs. Biollante game on the PS4 25 years later. Shogo Tomiyama would stay on as producer for Godzilla even after the Heisei series would end alongside Tomoyuki Tanaka, who has been on the Godzilla film since its creation. The Biogoji suit would, in my opinion, regrettably, set the standard for the rest of the Heisei era as well due to the 84 Goji suit being stolen, never to be recovered. Megumi Odaka, who portrayed Miki Sagusa, would become a mainstay cast member for the rest of the Heisei series, appearing in every Godzilla film since until 1995 in varying roles as a character. Sometimes useful, other times he's just screen filler. Emboldened by their success with the return of Godzilla 4 years prior, Toho thought it best to do something new, but unfortunately, that would backfire on them. Against a budget of $7 million, they will only gross back $9 million, which ironically is at least a percentage of his budget was earned back than what the next film of Renaissance would ever earn, as it was a box office failure by $500,000. Despite the small success, this put Godzilla on hiatus for 2 years while they debated on their next course of action. In the meantime, to recoup some of its losses, Toho gave distribution rights to Miramax, a division of Walt Disney Pictures at the time, making Mickey Mouse the owner of a Godzilla film. Yep, you can believe it. To the Warner Brothers HBO label. It was released on VHS in 1992, which a certain nerd has in his collection. ElGoji, on the other hand, has the 2012 re-release by Disney through Miramax through its Echo Bridge label. It would then be re-released via Lionsgate Pictures in 2015. Okay, here's where we start to delve into my own points of view on this movie, because I have a couple of theories about Godzilla and Biollante in this film, and what they did throughout the whole movie was kind of a plan or something. I don't know. But it begins right before her creation. When Erica died in the explosion, Shirogami somehow was able to trap her soul into a pair of roses, and he was able to nurture them as if they were his daughter, explaining 5 years of solitude. When he contacts Miki Sagusa to check on Rose to talk, and she says they don't, it is implied that Erica is angry or disappointed with her father for what he had done with her. She was seeking peace in the afterlife, and maybe hope for her father to get over her death and move on. But he refused to, the point where he becomes a recluse and refuses to communicate with anyone. And all she wanted was for him to be happy. Then, the final straw was when he experiments with her cells by combining them with the Rose and Godzilla cells. She looks herself in a mirror or something, and she starts crying in horror and sadness after seeing what he has turned her into the night the guys break in. Somehow, she flees to Ashinoko, where the media and populace find out about her and start doing stuff, you know? She then starts crying again because the whole crowd appears across the lake, thinking that either they're jeering her or something, or they're scared. Despite the people looking with awe at that thing she is exactly. In response, her Godzilla side somewhat takes over as she shoots her vines into the crowd to drive them off, which was partly successful because they were never seen again. When Erica sensed Godzilla emerging from Mount Mihara, she immediately calls out to him. And not just because they were made from the same cells as Shirogami suggested, but because she has found a way out of this prison they call Biollante. And she tries to get him to meet her at Ashinoko so that he can kill her easily. However, the military complicates this request inadvertently as they try to deviate him from Tokyo or any other major metropolis in the area. Which they sort of do, but Godzilla still ends up reaching her location. And the deleted scene where the military was placing the searchlights on her, they actually intended on sailing a boat to her location only for her to activate her Godzilla side and kill them in the boat. Once Godzilla arrives, she completely gives up and embraces the potential atomic breath that would set her free. But at that point in time, her Godzilla side takes over for good, and she starts attacking Godzilla, confusing him before shooting his atomic breath at her to get her to stop. That's when Erica, in a panic, tries to calm down the enraged beast, but it's to no use as her Godzilla side keeps trying to drown him or strangle him or snap his neck, doing everything she could so that he would die and she would become the dominant life form. However, he had enough of her attacks, and he finishes off with a blast of atomic energy, completely burning her to death. However, her true form emerged from the embers, staring at Godzilla and vowing revenge on him one day. That day would come to Godzilla at his worst time. Having taken 4 shots of ANEB, including the one that was shot in his mouth, mixed with microwave energy, he starts to develop a fever of sorts. Erica notices this and tries to reach him in her peaceful form in order for him to finish the job. However, her Godzilla side takes over once again, causing the ground to collapse, making Godzilla almost fall. And she proceeds to thrash Godzilla in every way possible until Erica in a way screams at Godzilla to kill her once and for all to stop this abomination from wrecking Japan, because even if Godzilla dies, there's no guarantee that Biollante would stay still and retreat. She would just take over fighting the military in Godzilla's stead. So for the last time, her Godzilla side takes over and she sprays him with her sap. And searing in pain, Godzilla blindly ends up inside Biollante's mouth, with her intending to swallow him whole. But in the last stand, as you know, Godzilla fatally shoots her in the mouth with his atomic breath, killing her and freeing Erica from this prison. When Sakusa hears Biollante's cries, she might have heard wrong due to her still recovering from the coma that was wrought upon her after her battle with Godzilla days earlier. And Erica was crying tears of joy as she was finally freed from a mutant prison and able to access the afterlife. However, she sees Godzilla at the brink of death by the ocean and has a pained expression on her face, the same one that the humans see when they see her image ascend with the spores. And in my opinion at least, it makes sense because Erica's death was the thing that triggered the events of the whole movie, as Shirogami's little unable to get over her was a bit of a catalyst. And had he just simply gotten over it or gotten some help from a psychiatrist or something like that, this whole movie would have been avoided. It would have been avoided. Godzilla would have still been trapped in the Mount Mihara. There wouldn't be such a big focus on bioenergy, as he would have taken out of something else in his life. Maybe he would have protested against bioengineering, as he might have used his daughter's death as a catalyst for that. Maybe, who knows, maybe Biomajor could have monopolized the market, or maybe they could have stayed out of the G-Cell business. Who knows what could have happened, because and all because he couldn't get over it. At least that's my theory. Comment below if that theory makes sense to you, or if you guys want me to explain it in plain English. But this is a movie that I would say watch it for the action, but skip some of the non-essential scenes, because it kind of takes away the ambience. I mean, that's how I would watch it. And overall, it might not even be worth watching, because in 2 years, this movie might be considered non-canon in the Heisei universe.